Hello, Shemai. Welcome to my wild Welsh garden. This is such amazingly good growing weather. It's really quite wet and it's really quite warm. Look, everything is so lush and green. I don't think I ever remember it looking like this. Look at the growth on that lavender. I've got several lavender bushes both sides of the stairs here. One of them died, well, a couple of them died really in the winter, so I've replaced them. In fact, I think I replaced that one with a little thyme, which doesn't seem to be able to get a look in with the lavender growing. And this is so old now, but it's a lovely place to have it because every time you walk past, you can swoosh it with your hands and get that lovely smell. And this one here has had an aubrietia growing through it for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's been looking lovely. It's going over now. That's the bit of the lawn that I mowed a few days ago, which is already growing. And this part, this meadow, is looking so lush and lovely. Can't film the birds in the bird bath anymore because I can't see them. There was a couple of you sounded quite surprised that I was letting my grass grow long and asked, did I not have snakes and ticks? And I just never thought about anything like that. We do have a venomous snake in the UK. It's called the adder, and it's very, very rare. So I'm not frightened of having a venomous snake in my garden at all. And we do have ticks, but they're usually associated with sheep, I believe. And those of you who know sheep and Wales, sheep and long grass do not go together at all. So the only place that you would find a tick, I think, is somewhere associated with sheep where there was some other long vegetation, like maybe bracken. But even then, I think it's quite unusual to pick up a tick. I've certainly never had one, and I don't think I know anybody else who has. That's the other thing. It does make it very difficult to count the birds in the garden at the moment, because I just can't see them. They're all in the undergrowth, which is where they should be, of course, eating all my slugs. Guess what? It's raining again. So here's another nice dollop of wet Welsh rain for all you people that like to see it and hear it. And this weather is just fabulous for slugs. But look at this. This is a campanula. I don't know which one it is. It's a native plant. I bought it a few weeks ago when I had my native plant buying spree. And it had a lovely rosette of leaves when I put it in. And look what the slugs have done to it. They've left me 2 and a bit leaves. And all around, the bugle, the creeping jenny, this plant whose name escapes me, primroses, erigeron, succulent, they've not touched. They've just homed in on that poor campanula. And all this lushness means that I don't know whether the hedgehog house is still being used, because I actually can't see on a film through all the foliage. Yeah, the entrance to the house is down there somewhere. And this is the path up to it. I suppose I could see movement, but I wouldn't necessarily know whether he was using the house. He's not coming for his tea anymore, but that usually happens in the summer, probably because there's just enough wild food for him, which of course is best for him anyway. And look at the amount of growth on the hawthorn in the hedge at the top of the garden. I think that is the end of the growth from last year. So I think you've got, what, 9 inches of growth already this year. And there's a similar amount of growth on this blackthorn here, just at the side of the stepping logs. That's where it ended last year, and so it's grown that far. So not very good at gauging distances, but I think that's probably about 9 inches. Now, what I would have done previously is I would have chopped all these ends off to keep a nice, neat edge to the path, and of course I'm not doing that this year, and I think that's maybe why I didn't get any flowers on this blackthorn. So I'm just going to leave everything and see if I get more flowers next year. Of course, it does mean, particularly with the hawthorn on this side, which is also growing like crazy, it's a bit more difficult to get over the stepping logs, but I'll persevere. And the meadow grass seed that I sowed is growing like crazy. So it looks like the plan is working. This is going to be the long grassy area, and it looks like it's going to have quite a lot of long grass. And the grass is growing well here as well, down by the side of the polytunnel. And now the foxgloves are flowering. Look at this lovely big healthy one that's self-seeded just at the corner of the shed, just in a pile of old bricks that I'd put there to store them. And there's another one the other side, both self-seeded. Yeah, could almost have been designed, couldn't it? And all down the back behind the raspberries. They self-seed all over the place, and I either leave them where they are or just move them where I prefer them to be. Most of the bees in the garden are quite small at the moment. That's because they're the first of the worker bees, and they get bigger as the season progresses. And they love this geranium. Now I know which one this is. This is geranium phaeum, or phaeum. It's only got these little dark purple flowers, but it must produce a lot of nectar because there's always several of these little bees on it. It's on the corner here, outside the potting shed under the Magnolia stellata. And these little bees are so difficult to film because they're so quick. They're much quicker than the queens that are quite sort of big and bumbly. So I've just stepped back a bit. I don't know whether you can see the actual bees, but I think there's about 3 or 4 on this plant. The other thing is, as well as being really, really good for pollinators, it also does quite well in the shade. It's quite shady here under the tree. And there's another one here, just to the side of the magnolia, so in a more sunny position. And again, I don't know whether you can see, but there's, oh, it's difficult to count, 3 or 4 bees. These little bees on this honeysuckle are actually robbing the nectar without pollinating the plant. Their tongue isn't long enough to get down these long tubular flowers, and so these little bees bite a hole in the bottom of the flower and get the nectar out that way. You can see there that I think she's using an existing hole. Aren't they cheeky? And the thing is, how do these little bees know to do this? How do they know to make those little holes there in the bottom of those flowers? I mean, they've only been alive for a few days. Have they learnt it from their mum or their sisters, or are they just sort of born knowing what to do? Yeah, it's a mystery, isn't it? You know, nature's a wonderful thing. So I was sitting in the breakfast room having a cup of coffee and seeing if I could see any activity at the blue tit box, which is hidden in all those climbers on the trellis. And I saw this. I was looking at this little ground-covered geranium that's been flowering since the start of spring and still flowering, and it's still being visited by bees. So I was just watching all these little bees, these little worker bees, and then I noticed this amazing thing. Actually on a bit of red campion, but it's what looks like a dragonfly just emerging from the nymph casing. So I'll see if I can get in a better position for you. But the extraordinary thing is that that's where the dragonfly is emerging from the nymph casing. Well, the pond is over there. So there's the pond where the nymph's been living. Now, I always thought that they just sort of climbed up the stalks of plants that were growing out of the water, like those hard rushes there or that yellow flag iris, and sort of emerged as an adult from the nymph casing there. I never realised that they went on a little trek for about, 10 or 12 yards? That's quite a long way for a little creature like a dragonfly nymph. And of course, seeing the dragonfly, I got totally distracted from the blue tits. But while I wait for the dragonfly's wings to harden and for him or her to get ready to fly away, I've been watching the box, but there's no activity and I can't hear anything, so I don't think it's good news. It's 2 hours now since I first saw the dragonfly, and he's moved up the stem of the red campion a little bit, away from the sort of discarded shell, the exoskeleton of the nymph that you can see that's left there. He's not moving very much. I do have to say I've not been sat here for 2 hours. I have made a cake and had my lunch, but I've been coming out every 10 minutes, quarter of an hour or so, just to check on him. But as you can see, he hasn't moved very far. It's now 4 hours since I first saw the dragonfly, and his wings have just started to open out just a little bit. And now he's opened his wings right out. And he's really changed colour. When I first saw him, he was very pale. And now he's darkened a lot. And his abdomen is quite bright yellow. And according to iNaturalist, he's a broad-bodied chaser. So that's the end of another exciting visit to my wild Welsh garden. Thanks for joining me. I'd love to see you again in the next video. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to join me on my adventures wilding my garden. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Hwyl fawr!